In Riyadh, South Korean President Yoon and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman adopted a joint statement for cooperation in a host of areas encompassing Saudi Arabia's NEOM City project and the expansion of investment. And they made it clear that they oppose attacks targeting innocent lives in the escalating war between Israel and Hamas. 4 North Koreans crossed the inter-Korean maritime border in the East Sea this morning in a wooden vessel and said they wish to defect to the south. A vetting procedure is now underway in the south. More Israeli airstrikes on Monday reportedly killed more than 100 in the Gaza Strip. The U.S., in the meantime, has warned Iran in a bid to avert the conflict widening. It's October 24th, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Min. In Riyadh, a new chapter of partnership for Korean and Saudi firms have been declared in time for the visit by President Yoon. This as major companies signed deals to work on megacity projects in Saudi Arabia. Woo Soo-young reports from Riyadh as she travels with the president.
President Yoon mapped out the future of South Korea and Saudi Arabia's cooperation in the digital post-oil era, as construction and IT giants from each side penned major deals to build smart cities and infrastructure. This came as Yoon on Monday marked the 50th anniversary of South Korea's first entry into the Saudi construction sector at a multimedia exhibit in Riyadh showcasing the country's NEOM line, a linear car-free sustainable city projected to open in 2039.
처음에 2천만 불에서 시작한 양국의 건설 협력 규모는 반세기 만에 1,600억 불로 확대됐습니다.
Reflecting on the decades of Korean firms and workers involved in over 1,900 projects across Saudi Arabia, Yoon called for the two countries to now build on their solid foundation of cooperation to meet the evolving demands of the times.
사우디는 새로운 국가 비전의 일환으로 네옴시티와 같은 메가 프로젝트를 추진하고 있습니다. 여기에 한국이 보유하고 있는 첨단 도시 건설 역량을 결합한다면 양국이 함께 미래 도시의 새로운 모델을 전 세계에 보여줄 수 있습니다.
South Korea's Hamon Corporation first won a $24 million contract to build a 164-kilometer-long expressway in Saudi Arabia in 1973, which opened the door to more construction projects in the Middle East. This in turn became a stepping stone for South Korean firms to make a leap into the global market and play a major role in modernizing the country's economy. As he called for a new era of infrastructural cooperation, the president oversaw the signing of 4 major deals for Korean firms in Saudi, a $2.4 billion contract to work on the Jafurah gas plant facility, a contract to build a digital twin platform, a virtual geospatial model of the real world for urban planning and management in 5 Saudi cities, along with an MOU on modular construction and an agreement to roll out digital infrastructure. Also on Monday, Yoon attended the Korea-Saudi Future Technologies Partnership Forum, where he discussed ways to strengthen collaboration on science and technology, focusing on 4 major fields including digital, clean energy, biohealth and space. Yoon's office says as both countries seek cutting-edge innovation and sustainability going forward, South Korea aims to increase joint research projects and people-to-people exchanges with Saudi Arabia, fostering a future-oriented partnership based on science and technology. Woo Soo-young, Arirang News, Riyadh.
President Yoon says South Korea and Qatar should go beyond cooperation in energy and construction to new emerging industries as they look to elevate their ties upon 50 years of bilateral ties next year. Ahead of an official state visit to Doha on Tuesday, President Yoon told a local media outlet that over the past half-century, the two nations have worked and prospered together, especially in the energy and construction sectors, as he aims to gain a deeper understanding of the country's development efforts under its National Vision 2030. Yoon noted that he'll seek to expand bilateral cooperation in the areas of energy, infrastructure, and trade, among others. He also spotlighted the growing cultural interactions and people-to-people exchanges. The South Korean leader will hold a bilateral summit with his Qatari counterpart on Wednesday. Back in Saudi Arabia, for the first time in more than 40 years, Seoul and Riyadh issued a joint communique condemning civilian attacks amid the armed confrontation between Israel and Hamas. Kim Do-yeon covers this bilateral stance and more.
South Korea and Saudi Arabia jointly rejected actions targeting civilians in the escalating situation between Israel and Palestine, while agreeing to work with the international community for swift humanitarian assistance to suffering civilians. The statement also said the two sides stressed the importance of intensifying efforts to prevent the conflict from spreading and the need for political solution and durable peace based on the two-state solution. This as Seoul and Riyadh came up with a joint statement on Tuesday, their first in 43 years, in light of President Yoon Suk-yeol's state visit to Saudi Arabia hosted by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The statement, comprised of 44 specific items of cooperation between Seoul and Riyadh, covered all areas from economic cooperation and cultural exchanges to regional security in the Middle East and East Asia. The two also agreed to actively explore the expansion of mutual investments in areas including the hydrogen economy, smart cities, future mobility means, and startups. As the two countries celebrate 50 years since South Korea's first construction project in Saudi Arabia, they agreed to continue building on this exchange with Saudi's ambitious Vision 2030 and NEOM project and other giga projects such as the Red Sea project. The statement also showed motivations for the two to enhance cooperation in defense and defense industry. In fact, on Monday, President Yoon also met with Khalid bin Salman Al Saud, Saudi defense minister, and other military officials, where they showed interest in jointly working with South Korea's arms production. The top office says this has paved the way for even more export deals for South Korean arms companies. Energy cooperation, conventional and new, was also mentioned in the statement. Saudi Arabia pledged to be the most reliable partner for crude oil, while South Korea is set to work with Riyadh for clean hydrogen and peaceful use of nuclear energy. Both sides also welcomed the growing popularity of Korean culture in Saudi Arabia and agreed expanding opportunities for civilian exchanges between the two countries. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Turning now to the latest in Gaza, over 100 Palestinians have lost their lives in a series of Israeli air attacks overnight. With the conflict escalating, the U.S. has deployed military advisors to Israel as it prepares for a ground offensive. The U.S. has also issued a warning to Iran against the expansion of the war. Song Yoo-jin reports.
More than 100 Palestinians were killed during Israeli air attacks in Gaza overnight on Monday and into Tuesday morning. Citing Gaza's Hamas-run government media office, Al Jazeera reports that more than 140 people lost their lives and hundreds more are wounded. The airstrikes hit a refugee camp in northern Gaza as well as the southern cities of Rafah and Khan Yunis. The Israel Defense Forces released surveillance footage on Tuesday of what is said were airstrikes in Gaza. The military added it struck dozens of Hamas gunmen and buildings and that several Hamas commanders had been killed. The latest figures from the Israeli and Palestinian health ministries show that more than 6,400 people have died since the start of the flare-up on October 7th. This comes as Israel prepares for its ground operation in Gaza. The U.S. on Monday sent its military advisors to Israel.
What I can tell you is that there are a few relevant military officers with experience, the kinds of experience that we believe is appropriate to the sorts of operations that Israel is conducting and may conduct in the future.
An unidentified U.S. official told AP News that among them is Marine Corps Lieutenant General James Glynn, who previously helped lead Special Operations Forces against the Islamic State. The official added that Glynn will be advising on how to mitigate civilian casualties in urban warfare. At the same briefing, Kirby also delivered Washington's warning to Iran.
We know they've supported Hamas and Hezbollah. We know they're monitoring these events very, very closely, and in some cases urging on some of these groups. And that's why I made it clear the president does not want to see this conflict widen. We have added additional military capability into the region to deter any such action, and we will act appropriately to protect and defend our national security interests in the region.
There's been an increase in attacks on U.S. military bases in Iraq and Syria recently, which the U.S. believes were supported by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard and the Iranian government. 송유진, Arirang News.
For the first time in 4 years, North Koreans have crossed the northern limit line in the East Sea, this time 4 people, and reportedly expressed their intentions to defect. A vetting procedure is underway. The military says that it had been tracking the movement of a small boat carrying the suspected defectors from early this morning, but it's facing yet another surveillance criticism. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
4 suspected North Korean defectors have reportedly been found in a small wooden boat in waters east of Sokcho, Gangwon-do province. According to a government official on Tuesday, they had expressed their intentions to defect. South Korean military authorities have confirmed that the suspected defectors have been detained after the movements were tracked.
A small wooden boat, believed to have come from North Korea, was spotted and tracked using coastal surveillance equipment.
A JCS official said at around 4 a.m., the military dispatched ships and maritime patrol aircraft near the northern limit line after spotting unusual movement from the north. At around 5:30 a.m., an army radar detected an object moving toward the south steadily at a very low speed. An hour later, the military used a thermal observation device to track the boat, which was moving diagonally towards Sokcho. A fishing boat from South Korea had also spotted the boat in waters around 11 kilometers east of Sokcho and reported it to the Coast Guard. Questions are being raised as to why the military could not spot the crossing of the NLL. A JCS official explained that detecting such crossovers is difficult as the NLL in the East Sea is over 400 kilometers long. The official also reassured that the military has been monitoring the boat closely after being detected on its surveillance equipment, and added that they have been cooperating closely with the Coast Guard and the Navy. A similar event happened 4 years ago when 4 North Korean fishermen defected to South Korea's Samcheok port in the East Sea and were forcibly repatriated to the north by the Moon administration. Last May, North Korean residents defected by crossing the NLL in the West Sea. The government is reportedly confirming whether the intentions of Tuesday's defectors are genuine. Defectors undergo an interrogation conducted by a joint investigation team consisting of the military, police, intelligence authorities, and the Unification Ministry. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
In other news, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is reportedly scheduled to visit the U.S. later this week ahead of a possible summit between the 2 countries on the margins of the APEC meeting in November in San Francisco. Yoon has the details.
According to senior officials in Washington, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is set to visit the U.S. Capitol from October 26th to 28th, where he'll meet with Secretary of State Antony Blinken and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. The diplomatic meeting comes as the war in Ukraine continues and the U.S. looks to prevent the Israel-Hamas war from escalating into a wider conflict in the Middle East. China's close relations with Tehran prompted Blinken to speak with Wang earlier this month to urge Beijing to use its relationships with the countries in the Middle East to prevent the conflict from spreading. Other topics expected to be discussed include the South and East China Seas, cross-strait issues, and North Korea's provocations. But Wang's visit is expected to focus largely on discussing a possible meeting between the presidents of the 2 countries, potentially during the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit set to be held in San Francisco next month. Biden and Xi last met on the sidelines of the G20 in Bali in November of last year and have not spoken since. Relations between the 2 countries have deteriorated over a variety of issues, including trade, technology, human rights, the status of Taiwan, and China's stance on the war in Ukraine. They were further thrown into crisis when a Chinese spy balloon was shot down over U.S. territory earlier this year. Whether or not Wang will meet with President Biden during his current visit is yet to be seen, with the trip described as reciprocal to Blinken's visit to Beijing in June when he met with Chinese President Xi. While China has expressed interest in a Biden-Xi meeting, it has also pressed for concessions, such as the easing of U.S. export controls on advanced semiconductors and other strategically important technologies. As stated by State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, there's no substitute for one-on-one conversations at the leader level, which remains hopeful for next month. 이은진, Arirang News.
Since the country's first reports of lumpy skin disease, a viral infection affecting cattle, the confirmed number of cases has risen to 27 so far across the country. The nation's prime minister vows to take action in the early stages. Yoon, he has the latest.
The outbreak of the viral lumpy skin disease appears to be spreading, with the number of farms found to have confirmed cases increasing to 27 as of Tuesday evening. According to the Central Disaster Management Headquarters, 3 additional farms are also under investigation. The first case was confirmed in Chungcheongnam-do province on October the 20th, with more being confirmed in other regions, including Gyeonggi-do and Chungcheongnam-do provinces. In response, the Ministry of the Interior and Safety started joint inspections on Monday with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs in 5 West Coast regions. However, concerns are growing, as out of the 10 additional reported outbreaks on Tuesday, Gangwon-do province, located on the East Coast, had its first case confirmed. Prime Minister Han Duk-soo spoke about the spread of the disease during Tuesday's ministerial meeting, emphasizing the importance of taking action in the early stages and adding the government will give its full support to prevent additional outbreaks.
Considering the period required for antibody formation, the next 3 weeks are crucial. We understand that livestock farmers may face many challenges, but we kindly request your active cooperation with the government's disease prevention measures.
Lumpy skin disease is a viral infection in cattle that is transmitted by blood-feeding insects, but it is not transmissible to humans. The mortality rate is under 10%, while symptoms include blisters and lower milk production. So far, over 1,600 cattle have been culled. Meanwhile, the authorities are proceeding with vaccinations of over 50,000 cows as rapidly as possible. Earlier on Sunday, the Interior Ministry announced that special subsidies of over 10 billion Korean won, or almost $7.5 million, will be provided to help halt the spread of the disease. Subsidies will be allocated to support disease prevention activities by local governments, including the operation of disinfection facilities. Lee Eun-hee, Arirang News.
Later this week, the government is going to announce more details about its plan to increase the medical school enrollment quota. That's been frozen at a little over 3,000 since 2006. All this is part of a greater plan for structural reforms in medical infrastructure to make sure non-urban and rural areas receive quality services in essential fields. For more on this, we have our political correspondent, Lee Si-hoo, joining us. Welcome, Si-hoo.
Hi, Jungmin.
Hello. So why the increase and why now?
Well, it's mainly because we're seeing a lack of doctors in essential care. Let's look at some numbers. According to OECD statistics, for every 1,000 people in South Korea, there are just 2.6 practicing medical doctors. This is the second lowest figure in the OECD, which has an average of 3.7 doctors per 1,000 people. Regional gaps also exist. For every 1,000 people in Seoul, there are 3.4 doctors, while other regions in the country have 1.8. What makes matters worse is that increasingly fewer doctors are specializing in the so-called avoided practices such as heart surgery, emergency medicine, and pediatrics. As of last year, 100% of dermatology residency seats have been filled nationwide, compared to only 28% in pediatrics. The Health Ministry says the demand for medical services will only increase as Korean society ages, and so the increase is inevitable. The specific scale of the increase hasn't been announced yet.
Now, Si-hoo, the doctors' associations are opposed for a simple increase. What's behind that?
Well, the Korean Medical Association, that represents more than the majority of doctors in South Korea, says that while they agree with the need to improve essential medical care, simply increasing the number will not solve the issue. Listen in.
The collapse of essential medical care and regional gaps that Korean society is encountering is essentially due to the avoidance of certain departments. So we're doubtful that increasing the quantitative number will improve the avoidance problem.
A doctor in practice and also the policy manager of the Korean Federation of Medical Activist Groups for Health Rights, Dr. Jeon Jin-an, says it's not the quantity of increase that matters.
Our federation agrees with the increase, but whether we increase the number of doctors by 1,000 or 2,000, doctors should be playing vital roles in essential care and at public medical institutions. If we simply increase the number this way, we may see more doctors making money running plastic surgery or obesity clinics, worsening the issue of unnecessarily distorted medical practice.
Meanwhile, the KMA is set for a meeting with the Health Ministry this Thursday where the two parties will negotiate pending issues.
I hear the ruling and opposition parties are in agreement with the need for more doctors.
That's right. Both are in agreement and they're for the increase in numbers, but there are slight differences in their suggestions for approach. For example, the ruling People Power Party lawmaker Kim Mi-ae, who is part of the Assembly's Health and Welfare Committee, says that while there's a lot of attention being paid to the medical school quota, the ultimate goal isn't the quota increase, but building a system where more lives can be saved.
The number of patients who have died despite being eligible for treatment is 38.6 per 100,000 people in Seoul, while 49.6 in Gangwon-do. There's such a severe medical imbalance between regions. We need to build a system that allows patients in a critical emergency to be treated in a timely manner.
Kim, who's led the party task force on improving access to pediatric care, highlights that the voices of those in the field must be reflected in the process.
In terms of pediatric care, it's high risk, low return. There's much risk, but the cost is the same as the other departments. There were many voices from the field calling for change, but it was difficult to implement change right away.
Now, the main opposition Democratic Party is also forming a task force to push for the founding of public medical schools and fostering stronger medical education at existing public universities. Heading the team is lawmaker Kim Sung-ju.
Because of regional gaps, people who want better quality medical service flock to the so-called Big Five hospitals in Seoul. This leads to the concentration of medical sales and patients in the capital region. The doctors trying to practice medicine in other regions cannot survive, so they too go to Seoul. This creates a severe medical imbalance, the core problem of our current medical system.
Kim says that increasing the weight and importance of public medical services is important.
Unless public medical doctors are directly trained or regional doctor systems are introduced, it will be impossible to secure essential medical personnel. The DP's solution is not to simply increase the number, but to make sure that the government carefully controls the number and their deployment.
For example, the government could offer scholarships for medical training and doctors would provide medical services in the region for a certain period. It's expected that talks will continue at the parliament until the details are finalized by spring to be reflected in the 2015 university admissions.
2025 university admissions. All right, it's an important issue. Thanks for the report. Keep us posted. Thank you.
Readings will hover around the seasonal average, along with big contrast in daily temperatures. Most regions will see a gap of 10 degrees Celsius or more in between day and night. For Seoul, lows will be starting off at 12 degrees, while highs will be jumping to 22 degrees. Southern parts of the country will see a bigger difference. Places like Changsu will see lows in single figures, but highs will be nearing 21 degrees. Meanwhile, showers will be coming and going for central regions until tonight. About 5 to 10 millimeters of sudden showers are possible. And for the East Coast, conditions are a whole lot different. There is still quite dry for eastern Gangwon-do province. Dry weather advisories are still in place for over the Akra region. Please take extra precautions against fires. Morning temperatures in Seoul and Gwangju will be starting off at 12 degrees. Warm daytime conditions are expected nationwide. Highs in Seoul will get up to 22. Chuncheon 20, Daegu and Busan will be topping out at 23 degrees. On Friday, the Seoul metropolitan area and Gangwon-do province will see showers. Clear skies will make a return by this weekend. That's all for now, and to the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up